This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. Donald Trump has signed executive orders once again this evening and dropped a bombshell into the international media. He's also announced plans to bring in tariffs against countries which levy them on American goods. UK economy grew fractionally in the final 3 months of 2024, with better than expected growth recorded in December, in a modest boost for the Chancellor. And at least 30 people, including children, are injured in a suspected attack after a car drives into a crowd in Munich. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Liverpool Echo political editor Liam Thorp and writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Quick fix is a dirty word. That's the first newspaper that we can bring you in the paper's stack. The Metro leading with European leaders condemning US President Donald Trump for appeasing Russian President Vladimir Putin during peace talks over Ukraine. The Daily Express also leads with Ukraine peace talks, reporting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is begging the world not to sell out his country to Russia. Also leading with Ukraine peace talks, the Eye reports that intelligence sources are saying US President Donald Trump has granted the upper hand to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Staying with Ukraine peace talks, and the Times reports America could keep air cover for European peacekeeping forces in the region. That's in exchange for rare earth minerals. Military chiefs have warned Prime Minister Keir Starmer that the UK government's defence spending isn't high enough. That's in the Daily Telegraph. The Daily Mail leads with Chancellor Rachel Reeves coming under pressure to come clean about her work expenses and employment history. The Daily Star has a mock CV for Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Amid a revelation, she exaggerated how long she spent at the Bank of England. The Mirror leads with a plan by King Charles to visit the US in a bid to boost ties with President Donald Trump. The Sun reports a frontrunner to win The Apprentice has quit after allegedly being accused of using racist language. Well, we are joined tonight by the political editor at the Liverpool Echo, Liam Thorp, and the writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue. Welcome to both of you. We are going to start with the Express front page, and the headline there is that we just read out: "End the war, but don't let Putin win the peace." The words of the Ukrainian president, Liam.
That's right. It's really hard to keep up with the Trump news cycle at the moment, isn't it? Because just as we're coming in, we're talking about tariffs, but it's really important to focus on what happened yesterday and the impact of that, which was this impromptu phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, which, essentially was Trump saying this is how we're going to end the war in Ukraine without really involving Ukraine. Now, he did speak to Vladimir Zelensky afterwards for what apparently was a much shorter phone call. And what a lot of people are saying today, including the Ukrainian president and European leaders, is how can you have a negotiated settlement to end the war without Ukraine being front and centre of that? And the idea of this kind of being done between the US and Russia above the heads of the people who are most affected by this, the amount of blood that has been spilled in Ukraine, the amount of energy and resource that has gone into fighting this war, the idea that this can be settled without them, or that the terms can be decided really without them, is crazy, really. And I think what Zelensky's saying here is Trump, in that one phone call, appears to have already given away so much of the negotiation opportunity for Ukraine. If he said, and his Defence Secretary Pete Hesketh has said, You know, two of the key things on the table: NATO membership for Ukraine, they've ruled that out, and returning to pre-2014 borders, they've ruled that out. So what's kind of left for Ukraine to come to the table and sort of demand? So Zelensky now, you know, he looks, you can tell he's really worried about this. I heard a Ukrainian MP on Sky before. You know, they sort of in this unbelievably unenviable position because nobody wants the war to end more than them. Trump is promising that, but how can they trust Vladimir Putin to be a man of his word? They know more than anyone that they can't trust him.
And just as we're speaking, we just want to bring you the live pictures of the news conference at the White House, where we're expecting the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and Donald Trump to hold a news conference. Hasn't started as yet, but as soon as that does kick off, we will be straight back to the White House. Esther, just following off from what Liam was saying there, in terms of what Donald Trump is calling the peace negotiations with Russia. Initially, it was very unclear whether Ukraine would even be a part, but he has clarified today from the White House and said that, of course, Ukraine will be at that peace negotiation.
Yeah, I mean, initially it looked like Ukraine was effectively being frozen out. I thought the announcement of, him meeting Putin in Saudi Arabia with MBS, who's also has quite cleverly straddled, America and Russia for his own country. I thought that was quite a telltale sign that, Trump is going to get the deal that he thinks works best for the US, not necessarily for Ukraine. He's a utilitarian to the core. And ultimately, what we can expect, the only thing we can predict Trump will do is what he thinks is in the best interest of the US and to a lesser extent, his allies. I thought, the indication by particularly Peter Hegseth that membership of NATO was out of the question, and that, returning to pre-2014 borders as well. It's understandable that there's a lot of nervousness in sort of amongst the Ukrainian political class. But I think what to take away from this is the fact that Trump is a man in a hurry, and he's trying to get as much done in as short a space of time as possible, because this is when his political capital is highest. If within the first month or first 6 weeks of his presidency, he can end the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza and do all of these sort of big headline things, Trump is Mr. Branding, Mr. Marketing, then he is going to do that. And I think what he's signaling to the rest of the world, particularly the EU, is that we're in an era of a new international sort of global order, and that they need to keep up or get out, because he's running the show at the moment.
And surprisingly, almost, we read in the Times that America could still provide some form of air cover for a European-led peacekeeping force in Ukraine, but in return for...
Yeah,
precious metals.
For precious metals, because everything is transactional with Donald Trump, isn't it? He is a businessman, and as Esther says, this is all about what he can get and what he can get out of it. And I find it pretty unpalatable, and I think a lot of other people will, that, we're talking about, many people losing their lives in this war, and Trump is looking at this from an economic standpoint. But I guess that's what we should expect. I think this story really speaks a lot to the uncertainty that European allies are feeling around the US's change in direction on Ukraine. That there would be absolutely no way that there'll be American troops involved in these peacekeeping missions if there is a negotiated peace. That seems to be a red line. But what the UK and Europe are hoping for is that there'll at least be some form of air cover. You can see, can't you, that
this has exposed, unfortunately, what this has exposed is the lack of foresight by mainly European leadership. Yeah. This is what David Lammy was saying, you need to keep calm, don't lose your heads.
He did say this was going to happen, didn't he?
Because it's decades long of European leaders not investing in their common defence. I mean, there are only three NATO allies that have actually met the required sort of GDP level of spend in defence. One is obviously the US, the second is the UK, and the third is Greece, surprisingly. And that's mainly a rounding error, because they spend so much money bribing sort of senior military officials. It's not actually because they're interested in investing in the technological capability of their military. So there is something to be said about the fact that why are these countries so happy, and why have they been so happy to rely on the US for defence and for something as common sense as protecting your own people, when that's the fundamental job of any government?
It also seems to have, the phone call with Putin seems to have caught a lot of European leaders on the hop. There's descriptions of really sort of frenzied and panicked moments amongst EU leaders, and they perhaps should have been more prepared for that, because Trump is an unpredictable man, but he did say he was going to try and solve this on day one, and he's obviously been praising of Putin before, so I think it was highly likely he was going to do something like this. It seems that they've been a little bit caught off guard by it in Europe.
Just quickly, we've got about a minute for the front page. 1949 deal to protect Europe from war is history, as you said, sent shockwaves through the world today.
Yeah, a realignment of the global political order. And so, you need to either keep up or get out. That's literally what it means. This is a generational shift that we should have been expecting, because the world is a different place from, the end of the Second World War. And unfortunately, I think many countries, many Western countries, have been too comfortable in assuming that the status quo was just going to continue, where the US would be effectively overcompensating for the national defences of many European allies.
There's no guarantee the US even stays in NATO. That's what a crazy world we're living in right now.
Big question mark. Liam and Esther, thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, we are keeping an eye on the White House for you for Donald Trump's latest news conference after he announced tariffs on many countries, allies and foes alike. And we will be discussing whether King Charles's trip to the US could boost the UK's ties with Donald Trump. Do stay with us for that and more.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We start with breaking news.
I am Anna Botting.
It's been quite some day.
The golden age of America begins right now.
A long-awaited ceasefire is now underway.
First question, Sky News.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
Describe this feeling, it's incredible.
Now to California.
The Democratic mayor of Los Angeles cut the fire department budget.
Do you owe citizens an apology? Have you nothing to say today?
Jane Secker, Sky News. Would you like to respond to us now?
I've never seen anything like this.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
In principle, would you agree to do that?
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
Historic day here today.
The cameras are poised here, there, everywhere, waiting to see what the president might do next.
I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all.
It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon. Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Oh! Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
The Premier League is exclusively on Peacock. Two of the league's biggest clubs find themselves at the wrong end of the table.
And the mood turns extremely sour.
Desperately chasing a win to turn their season around.
It's a beautiful finish.
Tottenham Hotspur.
To Eriksen. Back towards Anna.
Manchester United. This is the Premier League. February 16, only on Peacock.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of the screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Liverpool Echo political editor Liam Thorp and Esther Krakue, writer and broadcaster. Let's take a look in this section at the front page of the Daily Telegraph. And as Donald Trump is threatening to pull out of Europe, military chiefs in the UK are warning Sir Keir Starmer that 2.5% spending on defence will not even touch the sides. Liam?
Yeah, so this is all linked to what we've been talking about with Trump and with Putin and with this kind of new world order that we're looking at, where defence is going to be crucial. And, you know, Trump and Hesketh are saying that the European countries should be spending 5% on defence, which I don't think the US does at the moment, actually. The Labour has pledged to raise defence spending to 2.5%, but it's not there yet, and it hasn't really kind of got the ball rolling in the process of doing that. But what the Telegraph is saying, having spoken to Whitehall sources, is that even if it does get to 2.5%, that's just not going to be anywhere near enough for the situation that we may find ourselves in. Because if we find ourselves in a situation where the US drastically withdraws its support of Ukraine, then we have to factor in, as the UK and as obviously the European countries, how much more we'll have to spend to aid, I guess, to defend Ukraine, and B, if there is a kind of peacekeeping mission as part of that, and also our natural defence to an emboldened Vladimir Putin. So it's a scary time. A lot of pressure on the government. Obviously, the economy is not in a particularly good place. They're sort of going around various Whitehall departments trying to cut spending. And here we have people saying that it needs to be much higher in defence. So, yeah, difficult time.
And Esther, this is exactly what President Trump will want to hear. This backs his case entirely, doesn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, there's no point being a part of a club if everyone else can't hold their weight. But, I mean, troop numbers in the British Army are expected to drop below 70,000 this year. That's not enough people to fill up Wembley Stadium. So I don't think, you know, people understand how dire the context of which we're speaking is. That being said, I think the calls for higher spending on defence have been going on for way preceding Donald Trump. I mean, we spend more on our interest payments than we do on defence and the police combined. So it's not just a matter of our NATO obligations, it's the matter of the prudence of our own politicians to think if that's a wise choice to make. It shouldn't have had to take Putin invading Ukraine for us to realise that we're actually not protecting ourselves in the same way that the Europeans have painfully had to learn that lesson now.
Liam, now we know Donald Trump is a royalist, loves the royal family. The Mirror suggesting that the King is going to perform a charm offensive by meeting the president on tour of North America.
Yes.
Will this help?
If all else fails, get the monarchy out. I mean, we know that Trump was a massive fan of the Queen, and Americans in general do love the royal family. But I don't think maybe the King thought that this would be quite such a pivotal trip, really, at a time when Donald Trump is starting trade wars with the whole world, potentially unsettling an ongoing global conflict. Yeah, I mean, I guess Britain will be thinking, if anyone can sort it out, it's the King. Send in the King.
We shall see. We shall see. Liam and Esther, thank you very much for the moment.